What's up, guys? Welcome to the Line Change. And in this video, we're going to be talking about and asking the question, who will wear an A for the Vancouver Canucks this upcoming season? We are going to go over an article from Canucks Army that discusses this, and then afterwards, I've already gotten a list of potential candidates of my own choosing, and we're gonna kind of like compare them, see which ones both the article and myself got both picked, and maybe there's some that I picked that this article does not mention. I have not read the article yet, so I don't know which ones they picked, but we're gonna read the article first, and then we'll go over my predictions, possibilities on who could wear an A for this upcoming season for the Vancouver Canucks. Before we do that, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to my sponsor, Gassy Jack Art, maker of that amazing artwork you see over my shoulder right there. You can see the Quinn Hughes one right there too. And you guys can get your hands on some of your own at gassjackart.com. You can also find him on Instagram at gassjackart. There's a link to his website in the description down below. So let's go ahead and dive into this article written by our friends at Canucks Army, as I mentioned, and this one in particular written by Stefan Roget. And he goes on to say, Quinn Hughes is the captain of the Vancouver Canucks and should remain so for the immediate future, a fact for which we can all be grateful. But there's an argument to be made heading into the 2025-26 season. The rest of Vancouver's official leadership group is entirely undefined, so who should wear the A's on their jersey for the Canucks this year? Now, before we continue, I just want to let it be known that I did not have Pettersson in mind because I figured he's a obvious who's going to wear the A. No, he's not on my list. I figured he was a given, and considering he had one for the majority, or I guess the entire season last year, so I think he's a given, so he's not on my list for that. At the outset of the 24-25 season, the leadership group was the trio of Hughes with the C, Elias Pettersson with one A, and JT Miller with the other A. And let's just say it didn't quite work out. Miller was traded in late January 2025, and after that, the situation became a little more fluid. Tyler Myers was the designated inheritor of Miller's A, though no formal announcement was ever made whether or not Myers deserved the honor in the long term, and it's kind of hard to argue he doesn't. It had more the feel of an in-season interim thing than an official decision. Pettersson retained the other A, at least for the time being. With his well-documented struggles, there were calls from at least some corners to remove the letter, either to send a message or remove a distraction, or both. In any case, when Pettersson's season ended early due to compounding injuries on March 22, 2025, the team elected to replace him on a rotating basis. Brock Besser, the longest-tenured Canuck, aside from Guillaume Brisebois, seemed like a natural choice, but he did not receive full claim to that vacant A. A number of Canucks wore it between March and April, including Besser, Derek Forbort, and even the newly acquired Marcus Pettersson. Believe it or not, this choice was even caused a light controversy with one publication, but not this publication, referring to it as a bizarre leadership decision that quote-unquote disrespected Besser. It's a little dramatic for our taste, but it highlights the core point we're getting at here, which is that the alternate captaincy of the Canucks is currently about as unsettled as it could be. That means an opportunity for a change-up if the front office and coaching staff so desire. There's no obligation to stick with Myers, someone named on an impromptu basis after a major in-season trade, and if the team wants to look at it this way, there's also no real obligation to stick with Pettersson. As we said already, there were plenty of calls to put his A on someone else's chest long before he exited the lineup, and the fact that others wore it in the meantime provides all the quote-unquote excuse the Canucks could want to make a change if they so desire. The break in continuity, there could be short-term or it could be long-term. Now, the reality here is that the most boring answer is probably the likeliest one. Myers is the oldest player on the team, beating Forbort by 2 years, and remains one of the most well-respected and well-liked teammates on the roster. He still plays a large role on the ice in more ways than one, and has a history of sticking up for teammates and occasionally find ways to really shift the momentum out there. The easiest call to make is probably making Myers a permanent one. It's also most likely that the Canucks just stick with Pettersson for the other A, Even with what we said about the break in continuity, creating an opportunity for a more long-term change, there's no way that Pettersson being quote-unquote stripped of an alternate captaincy would escape the notice of fans and media. There would be questions right away, and that's a sort of negative buzz the Canucks would probably like to avoid with Pettersson this year, especially right off the bat. Were Pettersson to approach the team and ask not to wear an A because he'd rather focus on his own game, well then that's different. And it doesn't sound entirely out of the realm of possibility, but if not, he'll probably remain an alternate moving forward. There are, of course, other options. Besser made a significant commitment to the team by re-signing for 7 years after testing free agency ever so briefly. He's an obvious option, even if it comes with a particularly quiet brand of leadership. Marcus Pettersson wore the A few times for the Canucks last year after only being in town for a month or so, and that's a strong testament to his inherent leadership chops. It's a role he played in Pittsburgh while there and played well, according to no less a source than Sidney Crosby, who texted Rick Tocchet about Pettersson's leadership following the trade. Say what you will about the other candidates on this list, but only one comes with a ringing endorsement from hockey's greatest captain. The other individual who wore an A last year was Fulbart, and there was a lot to like about the veteran. He helped transform the penalty kill, covered injuries, and dropped the mitts to defend his captain. That's leadership material to be sure. The only real issue is that it's currently unclear just how much time Fulbart will be spending in the lineup in 2025-26, and how much time he'll be spending in the press box to make way for youngsters like the other Elias Pettersson, Tom Wielander, and Victor Mancini, sought to give an aid to someone who might miss half the games. Another name worthy of mention is Connor Garland. Like Besser, he showed commitment to the team with a 6-year extension. This one signed a year ahead of time to boot. And if we're talking about an alternate captain who leads by example, it's tough to find someone who puts forth a more consistent, outsized effort than Garland. Sometimes you need a captain to drag his teammates into the fight, and that's definitely Garland. Don't worry, even though Thatcher Demko also showed commitment to the team by re-signing ahead of time, we're not going to put his name out there. The Canucks have been there, done that. Really, that's about it. You'd love to reward someone like Kiefer Sherwood with a letter for many of the same reasons listed for Garland, but he's a year away from free agency. Jake DeBrusk and Philip Hronek are signed long-term, but don't seem like the right personalities for the job. So it's probably a trio of Hughes, Myers, and Elias Pettersson for 25-26, but there's also a chance we see any of Besser, Marcus Pettersson, Derek Forbort, or Garland in there too. The Canucks could always go back to a rotation if they wanted. Maybe Myers and Elias wear the A for home games, and Besser and Marcus wear them on the road, something the team has done before on a semi-regular basis, and is fairly common around the league. Whichever way they decide with training camp around the corner, I expect to know soon whether that comes in the form of a formal announcement or just the letters showing up on the front of the jerseys. So that is the article from Stefan Roget, Canucks Army. So he gives us a list of people of his own. And, having read that, I can't believe when it comes to my list, I completely forgot about Marcus Pettersson and the fact that he wore a letter. So I'm not going to add him to mine, but I think he is a very good candidate himself. But on that note, let's take a look at my list and who I think should or very well could wear an A, starting off with number 1, and that's, in my opinion, Connor Garland. He's, as was mentioned in the article, he's shown he's a leader both on and off the ice. He most certainly deserves to wear one, especially with him signing long-term, signing that 6-year extension. And also something that I've noticed after most of the games, especially when the Canucks win, I'm always seeing Connor Garland being the last guy off the ice and, fist pumping all the guys as they, go into the dressing room and just being very positive. That to me is a leader and shows that Connor Garland is a leader on this team, and he absolutely deserves the chance to wear an A on his jersey. But again, that's just my personal opinion on that. So number 1 for me is definitely Connor Garland. Number 2, Brock Besser for me. He, as we mentioned, he wore it a few times last season after Pettersson was injured and after Miller was traded. He's, as we mentioned, the longest tenured Canuck. He's signed long-term now, and he should, as well as deserves, to wear it, especially, as I mentioned, now that he's signed long-term. Yes, he's a bit of a quiet leader, but, I think, he should be rewarded for signing long-term. And, hey, if there's any injuries, heaven forbid, this upcoming season, I could see Brock Besser wearing an A when, say, for example, again, heaven forbid, and knock on wood, if Pettersson misses any time, hopefully it's short, Brock Besser could step in. Number 3 for me is Tyler Myers, as was really adamant and mentioned by Stefan Roget. Similar to Besser, he wore it a few times last season, or more so after JT Miller was traded. He's, of course, a veteran in the locker room. He's the oldest player in the locker room. And he absolutely is a leader and deserves to wear it as well. So perhaps the Canucks might be in a bit of a bind when it comes to choosing. But I could most certainly see Tyler Myers being either I could see them rotating it again, or if they wanted to go the more permanent route, they could obviously just have Myers and Petey be the ones to wear it. Now, this one's a bit of a wild card, and I know it was mentioned in this article that, he's not really a where was it? Oh, no, I did not see it. Oh, here. He's not really the right personality, but at the same time, I could see it. This is not so much a will wear an A, but he could potentially wear an A, and that's, of course, Filip Hronek. He's also signed long-term, and as I mentioned with, Myers and Besser, or more so Besser, he could wear one when there's an injury or if they decide to rotate. Next up, I have same boat as Filip Hronek. It was a name that was mentioned by Stefan Roget that he's not likely the right personality to wear one, but I mentioned Jake DeBrusk could wear an A. Again, signed long-term, could be a possibility if there are multiple injuries, or for someone who has one, sits out a game or two, and they just need to put the letter on somebody, and they decide to go with DeBrusk. Who knows? But this is probably a, maybe in a few years we could see this. DeBrusk could become a leader in the locker room, a few years from now. Keep in mind, he did sign a 6-7 year contract. So maybe a few years down the road, we could see him sporting a letter. Now, this one is a wild card / hot take. And this might get a lot of Canucks fans talking, at least about this one. And hear me out on this. My wild card / hot take is Evander Kane could wear one. I mean, again, if there's multiple injuries, heaven forbid, knock on wood, that's not the case. I mean, I even mentioned it. It's not likely, but it could still be a possibility. Obviously, people know about, his off the ice stuff. And, that's probably a big reason why he probably won't wear a letter. But since he's been in Edmonton, he's cleaned up his off ice, transgressions. And maybe it could be just a little something, for his hometown, throw a letter on him, if there's an injury, multiple injuries, who knows? It's, again, as I said, not likely to happen, but there is probably a slight possibility it could happen. Now, I mentioned this as a wild card. Now that I've read that article, I don't think it's a wild card anymore. But I mentioned Derek Forbort could wear an A, much like Myers is a veteran in the locker room, and he's seen as a leader. If Myers misses any time and, they decide not to give it to Besser, Garland, or whoever, they could, and if they're looking for someone who's a veteran, they could give it to Derek Forbort. So yeah, those are my lists. And as I mentioned earlier, I completely forgot about Marcus Pettersson. So I guess throw his name in the hat as well. He could be a possibility. But I want to know what you guys think. Who do you guys think will wear an A for the Vancouver Canucks this upcoming season? Not counting Elias Pettersson. So I guess there's only, one spot. So out of these names and the names that were mentioned in the article, who do you think will wear an A? And who do you think is more deserving of wearing an A? Do you think it's Connor Garland? Do you think it's Brock Besser? Do you think it's Tyler Myers? Or do you think it could be someone like Philip Perlnick, someone who's never worn a letter in their career or even as part of the Canucks? Could it be Jake DeBrusk? Could it be that hot take, Evander Kane, that wears a letter, and it'll probably get the Canucks fans and media buzzing if they do go that route? But once again, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think and who you guys think will wear an A this upcoming season for the Vancouver Canucks. And as always, if you guys like this video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks content, be sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a single video. You can find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook. Just search The Line Change. Find our Facebook page. You can find us on Instagram at The Line Change, on X at Line Change Man, on TikTok at the TLC Podcast. You can also find us on Blue Sky at The Line Change. Feel free to give us a follow on all of our social media platforms. If you prefer an audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. On Spotify, feel free to give us a follow as well as rate and review us. It is, of course, greatly appreciated, and it really helps out the podcast. But that's going to do it for me in this video. As always, let's go Canucks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.